Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast. As you probably have heard by now, Beşiktaş have completed their capital injection, something that was hoped to bring the club back to financial security because of the 4.2 billion lira debt, if I'm not mistaken, to the bank union, which is currently crippling the club due to the interest payments that we have to make on that loan. That's roughly, give or take, a $90 million loan, and we have to pay around 50% interest on that annually. So essentially, every year on 90 million, we're paying, give or take, 40 million euro dollars, sorry, interest. So that is obviously very crippling for the cash flow of the club. So with this capital injection, Beşiktaş increased the amount of shares available and was intending to sell off, if I'm not mistaken, Ural 4.8 billion shares at
Correct.
2 lira per share. And that was supposed to bring in 9.6 billion lira. That was, of course, in a perfect world, in a perfect scenario. I don't think anyone truly expected us to sell the full 4.8 billion shares. But we were hopeful that a decent amount of shares would be sold so that we could, at the very least, exit the bank union agreement and rid the club of these crippling interest payments. However, unfortunately, today the announcement was made by the club that we only managed to bring in a total of 1.4 billion Turkish lira. That is roughly $37 million. So that is nowhere near the amount needed to get rid and get out from under the bank union agreement. So, Ural, can you just explain to us exactly how we have to look at this? What went wrong, do you think, and what does this mean for the club going forward?
Yeah, sure. So happy to be here again, and hope I can clarify this sort of technically financial um, um, attempt that the club is trying to make. And well, with the limited information, it's also difficult to understand what's exactly happening. Luckily, there was a little bit more information over the course of the day. So especially now that we're past sort of the whole selling period, it's clear and the results are there. So I think it's good to go through what happened, right? So what was done, and why this result has came to be. But maybe we can start with a bit of the financial part, sort of technicalities, how what was done and how did it came to be, and then second, I think we can discuss what could have done, what could have be done differently to maybe get a higher result, because I think there are also quite some things to say about that as well. So just like last time, I prepared a bit of an information sheet just to give some insight, because there are a lot of numbers, there are a lot of percentages, and you also see on the internet a lot of information, but also misinformation because people not understand the information
Yeah.
correctly, also partly due to not all the information being available.
And for our first time viewers, Ural, could you maybe very briefly introduce yourself a little bit so they know
Of
what
course,
your
yeah.
background is and why you have the know-how and why we of course are talking to you as our in-house financial expert?
Yeah, sure. So I've been, well, I'm Ural, living in the Netherlands, and been a Beşiktaş fan all my life. And my background, I have a legal background, but also a financial background. I've been working in the financial industry for more than 12 years now. So I know a little bit of the financial side of things, and I try to clarify it or give some more information on these technicalities, as it's not always clear. And since Beşiktaş is in a financial pickle, and finance are always an important part. I think it's good to know that side as well, apart from the football side, of course.
Yeah, and I think ever since I've been following the club, I feel like we've been in financial peril for the last 20 years or so, and I was kind of hoping that maybe this capital injection could be the start of the end, or give us a light at the end of the tunnel. And if it would have been successful, it probably would have been that light at the end of the tunnel. But unfortunately, we'll talk about exactly how it works. Do you want me to bring up the slide already, or?
Yeah, sure. And do you think so? Maybe for first-time listeners, just to briefly explain what the capital increase, or what has happened, or what they tried to do, because so basically the club announced a capital increase in March, and we discussed it. So there is a video on that capital increase, and what the club basically did is issue new shares and brought that to the public, and to the existing shareholders and to the public. There are certain rules around it, but in general, new shares were brought out. That was accepted, and with the intention to sell those shares and to raise capital and to repay the banking debt. That was basically the what the club tried to do, or tries to do. And if you bring up the sheet, then I think I've numbered a couple of topics. There's a lot of numbers that you can see, but we'll just go through it so that everybody can follow and understand what has happened. And of course, Kaan, please be sort of the voice of the public and ask me all kinds of questions, because maybe I go too quick, or I'm not too clear about certain terms or topics. But what happened is the club asked to increase capital. You go to the stock market and you ask permission to bring out new shares on the market. The stock exchange needs to approve it, or there's a commission that needs to approve it. So you cannot just bring out new shares. There's also a limit to it, because otherwise you can just drown the whole market or the other shareholders. So there are certain rules around it, and the club was able to increase the shares, or they were allowed to increase the shares from 1.2 billion to 4.8 billion, which is an increase of 400%, and that was approved. And then the idea was, or the first step is always that you provide an issue right, a preferential right to the existing shareholders, so they get a first right to buy new shares if they want. They don't have to, because it costs money, but you get the first right so that you as a shareholder are not watered down.
Yeah, so that was that first round that took place last week, I guess, right? Where people were able, the current existing shareholders, like you said, were able to buy in. They basically got early access, so to speak.
You can say it like that. It was between the 16th and 30th of April, so it was 15 days that they were able to exercise their right to indicate, yes, I want new shares and I'm willing to buy, or also they need to tell what the amount they want within the total rights they have, and they can just they had 15 days to exercise that right. And
so in those 15 days, Ural, from the 4.8 billion shares available, how many did the current existing shareholders end up buying?
Yeah, so that's basically depicted in number 4 in that table. And this is where I have to admit, last time I thought it was different, but now that this information came out, I understand why the numbers are different than we first thought. So it's actually correct that 9.6 billion was to expected, but I will tell later on why that's not why that was not a feasible number, so to say. But come back to your question. If you look at picture 4, you see preferential rights sold. So in the second column, 445 million. That's basically what was sold in the period from 16th to 30th of April, existing shareholders exercising their right to buy new shares. So out of the 2.3 billion, because on the left side you see total available, that was made available to that group, only 445 million were sold to them, or they opted to buy.
That's interesting. So they made 4.8 billion new shares, but only a total of just under 2.4 million was made available. So half wasn't even put on the market.
Yeah, and that's also the reason why I think we were a little bit misguided by the information that we had back at the time, because the situation is a bit different than we thought. So if we look at number 2, that was the table that we showed the first time, and that was based on the information that we had.
Yeah.
So on the left side you see capital, 1.2 billion. That was the situation before this was announced. And then you see the increase to 4.8 billion. And the club has 2 types of shares, A shares, B shares. This is how the division is. And if you then calculate 4.8 billion new shares times 2 tele makes 9.6 billion, which is in effect correct, right? The total number of shares against the price. However, if you look at number 3, you see the shareholdings that the club holds. And my misinterpretation was that this was divided between A and B shares, but that's actually not the case. And this is sort of key for that calculation, because the shareholding of the club and the non-club ownership, basically, there's no difference in type of share. So 51% of the total of shares is held by the club. Yeah. So out of the 6 billion new share capital, 3 billion is held by is going to be held by the club, and the rest available for the market. So if you look then to the increase, so because they already have shares, so the club has shares and also the public has some shares. So if you look at that 4.8 billion increase, which is depicted under increase, you see that 2.4 billion out of that increase is intended for the club. So the club has to buy those shares, or has the option to buy those shares, if it wanted to maintain the 51% shareholding.
Yeah, the majority.
Then, exactly, the majority. And then the non-club ownership, so the public, 2.3 billion. So already you see there that the club itself needs to pay 4.8 or 4.9 billion almost out of that 9.6 billion. And obviously the club is not going to do that, because the club doesn't have the money. So what they do is it becomes a claim. So the club, A.Ş, has a claim on the club, on the association. But that's not a cash deal. That's not a cash event. So they get the shares, but they write it down as an unpaid claim in the accounting. But that still doesn't resolve. That doesn't raise capital. That doesn't raise money to repay.
Yeah, obviously, because there's nothing coming in. So
exactly. But they did get the shares.
Yes,
so
yes.
Then this answers your question. Then the reason why only 2.3 billion was made available is because half of it went already to the club. Yeah. So that was sort of a little bit of misguided information for us, because I think we have different understanding.
But that's also because nobody explains this, right? Like,
no.
And even if you look online right now, nobody understands absolutely. Like what you are telling us right now, this is, I can guarantee you, from the people watching this, 99% of the people watching, this will be new information, because this is just like, nobody talks about this. Even like the journalists, like the supposed people who are supposed to cover the club, they have no clue. No. I think we were the only ones who did a proper video on it last time to begin with, because nobody else had any sort of proper information, let alone that they have this sort of information right now. So kudos to you, but it's also unfortunate that our club does not provide the public with this information, because I still think that the result of today's announcement, I mean, 1.4 billion is pitiful, really. But it looks less dramatic than if the goal was 9.6 billion. The goal was, I guess, 4. What was it?
4.6, 4.7.
4.6 billion. Yeah, was the goal, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's a different picture, obviously.
Yes.
And then also it becomes clear that you could only then raise enough to repay the banking debt, right? And there wouldn't be any extras.
Because we were under the impression that it was gonna be like the total. If the 9.6 billion would have sold, for example, that would have amounted to 240 million euros. So that was more than double. That would have been essentially more than half of the club's total debt. That would have been like 70% of the club's total debt.
And mind you, it's not that those shares are transferred to the association for free. It needs to be paid. It will be never paid. I understand that, but it's not that you can sort of transfer these shares for free to the association. So that, and obviously, it's a lot of technicality that maybe is the reason that they don't explain. But if you look at sort of the CNBC interview that the CEO did, etc., it's also very unclear, even for me, how they sort of came to this, or how they envisaged this. So I don't know why they do it, but it doesn't help at all, because now everybody thinks, okay, 6 billion total new capital, we only raised this. So there's a lot of questions. There are a lot of disgruntled people going to the election. So tactically, it's definitely not a good thing to do.
It's not very smart. I mean, he's lucky, I think, that there isn't a serious counter candidate right now. The only person running at the moment, I don't think stands a serious chance. But if say, for example, Fiket Orman would have run, or somebody else that has a little bit more of a reputation, maybe then he would have had some problems with this. Because this, I mean, I have to say that for me, it really soured my day. It feels like just another slap in the face.
Unexpected, because the message up until now, and there was some information that it was very limited, that the preferential rights were very low, but the calculation didn't add up. So at first I also didn't understand, like, it should be enough what they raised, right? If you look at the unsold part at number 4, if you see preferential rights unsold, well, if you then sort of make that calculation for 4.8 billion, you think, hey, 2.4 billion is sold, so I think we're already there, right? But then all of a sudden you realize that that's sort of a non-cash event, shares to the club, which is, like I said, a non-cash event. So, and then the reality kicks in, saying, hey, wait a minute, we haven't raised enough capital at all, not even close to sort of repaying the banking debt. So you're right. I was also very pissed off, so to say, when I heard this news, and partly I think that's the second part. After 30th of April, the unsold shares of 1.9 billion, they were made available to the public. Mm-hmm. And there's a sort of a second mistake, in my view. While it was announced that it would be that 1.9 billion was going to be made available to the public, it wasn't clear how to buy those shares and then which shares to buy. And that's what I tried to pick in under number 1. So you have our regular stocks, so on the stock market, which is open for the public.
A.Ş,
So and that's sort of what's daily traded, right? That's sort of basically secondary market.
That's the stuff that's already owned by people. That's the shares that are already out there. And then the BJKAS.B or BE. I think there were 2 different ones, right? Those were the ones you were supposed to buy, but that wasn't 100% clear to people. In fact, we in our WhatsApp group, we had several people asking information about it because they wanted to buy shares. and you kind of had to explain it to them how to go about it. And even today, Kartal's twin brother was looking to buy shares, and he tried to do it through his Ziraat Bankas account, and he wasn't able to do it. Apparently, you could only do it with certain banks. So like Halk Bankas, I guess Iş Bankası, several different ones. What's the one that has like the gold name? What's it called? Like Midas Bankası or whatever. Like those banks worked apparently, but apparently Ziraat did not, which is mind-boggling if you think about it, because Ziraat is one of the biggest banks in Turkey. So that's quite weird. But obviously that is not really the club's fault, I guess. That's more down to Ziraat Bankas's platform, I suppose. But still,
it depends, to be honest.
Yeah, but maybe like an informational video, like have the social media team make a short, 90-second video about how to buy shares.
It came after day one. It was so late. It came after day one when sort of people started saying, okay, am I buying the right one? What is it? Why? How should I do this? And you see the result. Sorry.
Yeah, they had a week, right? Like after the main one closed, the preferential sale closed, they had 4 or 5 days to come up with a social media campaign that could have explained it to the people what they could have done.
And you see the result under number 4. If you look at 5th of May, I've split the days because there were 2 days that you can buy these primary shares, and within a time window. And you see the difference is quite big, because on day 1 it was only 73.6 million, and on the second day, when people understood and got more information and know how to do it, it was more than double that amount. So then you wonder if this was done properly and people were informed properly. I'm not saying that we could have reached 1.9 billion, but it could have been more than this, is my feeling, if you look at the responses online.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is a pity.
What we do have to reframe, our main takeaway from this is that we have sold 700. Well, the club has sold 716 million shares out of a potential. How much shares? 2.4 billion? Is it 2.4?
Yeah, so 2.35, yes, which was made available to the public, right?
Yeah, so 2.4 billion. So that isn't as bad as it first looked, at least. That's still not that's still nowhere near half, but it's better than what we thought initially, where it was just 716 million out of 4.8 billion, right? So at least it looks a little bit better in that regard, but still it doesn't really change anything in the outcome, because the outcome is that only 1.432 billion Turkish lira was injected into the club, essentially, which is, that's not a negligible amount. That's still way over 30 million euros. It's $37 million according to today's exchange rates with the lira. So that's a decent amount of money, but it doesn't clear the debt. It doesn't even clear half the debt. So where do we go from here, Ural? Is there anything left on this PowerPoint that we need to show?
Yeah, so only on the number 5, because they're now trying to sell this as sort of a positive. You see that the shareholding has changed, and the reason for that is because of the unsold part. So what happens with those primary shares that are unsold, because 1.6 billion is unsold? Yes. Well, bad news, because people think maybe we can sell it later, or etc. etc. Yes. Bad news: these will be cancelled within 6 days. So you cannot sell those unsold shares, which means that our share capital will be not 6 billion in total, but you see the corrected capital. I've calculated it; it's 4.3 billion. That's, I think, what's going to happen, meaning that the club's shareholding changes, because on paper the club did the whole preferential right thing for the full 2.4 billion, and the public didn't do it. So the shareholding changes from 51% for the club to 70%.
Yeah.
and the public from 48% to 29%.
Yeah.
So, well, great. We have sort of more majority, which we didn't basically need because there was no sort of existential threat on the shareholding side. But in the future, I guess you can sell off 20% of your shares, trying to sell them off on a market which is, well, basically plummeted. So I don't know if that will be a way that it will not be a way out, I think.
Yeah. So just to summarize that, so from the 4.8 million shares that was created essentially
Billion.
4.8 billion. Sorry, 1.6 billion was left unsold, but the club's half of the 4.8, so 2.4 billion, that is still there. Those won't be cancelled, but the 1.6 unsold parts that were supposed to go to the public, those will be cancelled because they haven't been sold, and therefore the ownership of the club right now changes from 51% owned by the club shares, changes to 70% now, which essentially in theory means that the club could in the future sell off 19% of their shares to keep their 51% majority. So there is a possibility there to sell and make some more money in the future, but obviously that's not something that's going to happen anytime soon, right?
No, because imagine that amount, even 19%, to float it on the market, to sell it on the market, it will impact the price. You already saw the price went from 4 tele before this was announced to 2 tele, so it was already cut by half, and I think it will go down even further in the coming days. So yeah, and I don't see this increasing, especially now the financial issues are not solved. You know, if we would have fully repaid the banking debt, that would have had a positive impact on the finances and then also on the share price. But that's not going to happen. And this also shows that the market and shareholders and serious investors don't believe the story and don't believe the finances. They don't see they don't see a happy ending, so to say. So why would they then invest in the club? It's a harsh message, but it is the way it is, right? So I don't see that anytime soon. They did this. You can't do this again quickly, especially not after this result. So I don't think I think this book or this chapter is closed for quite a while with regards to raising capital on the stock market. I don't see it, especially after this, because if this was a normal company and a board of directors trying to attempt this, and this was the result, I think I think shareholders would ask for their heads, right?
Heads would roll, exactly.
It's horrible. Yeah. It's horrible. Yeah.
Of course, this couldn't have been timed worse, right? Like the world economical market is it's rebounding a little bit with the pause on the tariffs and stuff like that, but still lots of people lost a lot of money. Of course, lots of people made a lot of money, undoubtedly, but you know, the average Joe on the street who maybe didn't see it coming probably lost a lot of money if they had money in the stocks. So on top of that, the Turkish economy for the last 12 years has been slipping. The lira has gone from, back in 2013, it was one euro was 2.5 lira. I think today, 1 euro is 45 lira or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's crazy, of course. And people in Turkey right now, they're struggling financially. And still, despite that, I think what you can see in this, probably the regular fans, I have the impression that most of these stocks were purchased by regular people, not
I think so too.
You know, the rich people that we always talk about, the rich businessmen that support Beşiktaş and that want to help Beşiktaş and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it just goes to show you that those people aren't interested. And I don't know if I can really blame them, honestly, because I think, what are they getting in return here? They're not getting anything, right? They're getting a stock that is essentially worthless. Of course, it can increase in value. It can go back up to 4 lira or something, but if it goes back up to 4 lira, by that time maybe the lira has gone down.
Or inflation, right?
Yeah, or inflation, exactly. So it's not a good investment. Let's be honest. In essence, it's a donation, but these rich people, what do they like when they make donations? They like to have their name out there. They like that everyone knows that they are the ones that donated. By the way, 1 euro is 43.86 lira at the moment, so just under 44.
And deduct from your taxes. That's also what they like. So you need to be able. It needs to be deductible. So if you do a donation, so why? Yeah, you're absolutely right.
If you sponsor the club with your company, you get you get your name out there, you get your company's name out there, you get advertisement, but essentially that is what it is. That's why you sponsor, and it's tax deductible, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's a bigger incentive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a much bigger incentive to do so. So this, I saw a tweet from Firat Gunayer who was talking about the fairy tales of the rich business community of Beşiktaş, blah blah blah, and kind of trying to put the blame on there, and it's kind of double, because to me, I think, yes, I understand that, and that is something that is, but to me that kind of feels like they're trying to frame a certain, they're trying to steer how the fans have to react to this. They're trying to manipulate the fan reaction, because to me, okay, he has a point, but this first and foremost is a failure from the club leadership, from Ural Alhan, who promised to take the club out from the bank union agreement in May. And with this, he is not going to be able to do that, at least not in full. Ural Alhan said that the club will use this money to exit the bank union agreement partially. So they will use this 37 million towards, reducing that outstanding debt, and that will of course then reduce the amount of interest payments we have to make, because obviously if you have, instead of $90 million debt, you have $53 million debt, and you have to pay 50% interest on 90 million, that's 45. If you have to pay it on 52, then you only have to pay 26. So there is a significant difference there. It's not all bad, but it's nowhere near what we had hoped. We had hoped to be completely out from under it, and then essentially would have had a budget that would have increased by nearly 50% for next season, because the club last year, we looked at this, I think in our first video, had a total income of $97 million, but of course half of that went to the bank union.
Yeah.
So it is, with quick calculations of somebody who doesn't know much about finances like myself, then if you add 45 million, or if you detract the 45 million interest payments, then essentially you're doubling your budget.
Yeah. No, and in essence, obviously, 32 million or 37 million, it's welcome, right? $37 million, 32 million euros. It's obvious, but you have to bear in mind that you don't do this. So you can only do this, like I said, once. This is not sort of an ongoing thing that you can sort of try to exploit.
No.
So you have to choose your momentum carefully. You have to pair it right, and to be fair with sort of your reference to the rich people. When it comes to finances, it should be there should not be emotions with finances. So if they do an investment, or you ask them to do an investment, it needs to be an appealing investment. Now, it's a very difficult story, but I think they should have done a roadshow. They should have prepared. They should have talked. They should have showed, this is our plan, and this is how we're going to do, how we're going to get the club back on track. And there could have been an enticing investment story, not maybe for the completely objective investor, somebody who is still a fan of Beşiktaş, is already a sponsor, etc., but there could have been an attractive story to say, okay, guys, we do this, and then you buy shares, etc., and then we get this club out of this banking debt completely, and then we have sort of a budget that the rope around our neck is untied. We have breathing room, and we will be a positive
flow.
A positive cash flow club, which can pay for its own costs, etc., without loans. Exactly. And then the share price could increase. You have an interesting, compelling story, but they didn't do anything. They just mentioned, we're going to do this. And I thought, at the background, when they announced this, they already have talked with funds, with investors. They have this. They have
it lined up. Yeah.
Why would you otherwise then do this if you're uncertain about the outcome? Because this is damaging in the end for the reputation of the current board. You have this Deutsche Bank guy, head Turkey, and head of the regional banking, whatever. Well, you come from the banking sector, then you need to do this. Why is there then not an advisor or another bank that helps you get this out on the market? Why isn't there a list, or why haven't you spoken to all the Turkish banks and prepared them and say, okay, you need to make this an appealing story as well for your clients, make it easy for them to buy shares? Why did you not have respect for your fans who are more than willing to buy shares, even though their hard-earned money will be a loss? The moment they buy the shares, there's already a loss, but they will still do it. Why were you so disrespectful and not explain this from A to Z? Worked with another bank in the Beşiktaş app, right? We have the app for it. Whatever, you could have figured out multiple ways to get this promoted and marketed. I don't know, make a deal with 5 TikTokers and have there's a plethora of things.
Or go on a campaign, like for the elections, they find the time to go on every talk show and whatever. And they could have done so many things. They could have done social media campaigns. They could have done a lot of different things. This was a very important, pivotal thing, and they spent. I feel it feels like they half-assed it.
It really pisses me off. Because if I can think of it, and I'm not an expert in that sense or whatever, but if I can think of it with a little bit of will and putting my mind into it, then how come these supposed experts cannot come up with this? And I know some things are bound by rules, right? But still, even with those rules, within those rules, you can perfectly do a campaign and sort of activate the right people, and not having people scramble on these 2 days trying to buy shares and not understanding what's going on.
I think they would have been much better off if they would have just done like a donation campaign, and they could have because then at least they could have included the diaspora fans. Because right now,
coming next.
Yeah, maybe. Let's hope so. Maybe then we can help. Because now, for example, we had questions in our group. Nathan Davies, for example, one of our Patreon members and community members, he asked about it. Like he also would have loved to buy shares, but he can't because he's American and he has no access to the Istanbul Stock Exchange. Yeah. So you're immediately excluding hundreds of thousands of potential investors.
Yeah, absolutely. And
then you and me, for example, unless if you have a Turkish bank account, I don't, so I couldn't buy.
No, it's impossible. And then, how difficult is it? And I might be sort of overreaching it, but how there are sort of international brokers. Talk to them, see if they can make it available, whatever, right? Try to navigate this and make it as appealing as possible and available as possible for the broad public. If you already know that the bigger funds, the investment funds, are not going to step in.
Yeah, given how important this was, you should have pulled out all the stops. You should have done 100% make or break, and they didn't. And even though Serol Adale has said himself how important this was.
Yeah, and it's crucial.
Yeah, and yet it feels like it feels like a kid who is about to flunk school, and they have a really important exam, and they know how important it is, and they know like a month, 2 months in advance, they know how important that exam is, but they keep putting off studying until the very final day, and then they're surprised that they flunk.
Yeah. So I'm very curious.
I am talking from personal experience there, by the way.
As if you relive it.
But that's how this feels, man. Like this shouldn't be happening at this level.
It's weird, right? And that's also sort of we sort of blame the rich people, but mind you, it's also their kids' inheritance. They need to be careful with their money. And if you see board members fighting each other on stage, would you put your money there? Say, "Oh, I have confidence in this club and in sort of the people that are there," and I would run away. I'm sorry, but
that's the thing, right? Like, you're giving money to the club, yes, but you're also giving money to those people who are in charge, and they're the ones who are going to. You have to trust them to put that money to good use. And if you see the shambles the club has been in over the last couple of years behind the scenes, like, would you give your money to Ahmed Nouhchebi? Would you give your money to Hassan Arat? Would you give Seral Adala right now, he hasn't done anything to earn our trust. Like, this is for me, this was his first big test, and he didn't just fail, he made a meal out of it. This is to me, there's no better option right now, but to me, this is like you said, if this would happen in the financial world, then people would be calling for heads.
He would be gone.
Yeah,
for sure, because this would be it's a catastrophe in that sense, and he would be gone because then you've not done your job right. And let's not forget, every step that's taken, so on the financial side, trying to help sort of the club out of this, is only again with assets of the club. Yeah. There's nothing added again to the club. So we try to create shares, sell shares. That was something that the club had, that they could that you could do, and it's done with assets from the club, with sort of with assets from the club. And his second plan, his new real estate project, is existing land owned by the club, and he's trying to sell that or sort of make a real estate project out of it. Again, nothing is added from his skill or his assets to the club. I'm not talking about sort of the money that he lends out to the club to pay sort of the daily expenses, but there's nothing added. Real estate projects are, in that sense, not difficult. It's not difficult to find an investment company that wants to build something there. If you have the land, which is the biggest product, it's the most important product, expensive product, it's not that difficult to find somebody who wants to build something there and earn you money, right? So what is this man adding?
Right, but we learned from Fulia that is not possible.
Exactly. Yeah, you need to do it right, of course.
If you get left holding with the parking lot, then
no. But what I'm saying is that also a little bit reflecting to because there's also election coming Sunday, and there's no serious opponent. So I'm not against that this man gets an extension, but until now he hasn't added anything. So he's similar to the others, not adding anything to the club from their own from their own from their own power, from their own means.
Skill
exactly.
set, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't expect a president to come in and pump in 100 million of his own money, but you expect them to use their skill set, which Seral Adala has a reputation for having done a great job with the Turkish Jockey Association. So you expect then for him to use that skill set that he has used in the past to increase the value of the Turkish Jockey Association, to then do that with Beşiktaş as well. Now, look, I still think that the plan that he seemingly has, with the sportive plan, with the sporting director and with the technical staff surrounding Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and all that kind of stuff, I like where that is going. But at the same time, this is a man who promised to take us out of the bank union agreement in May. He is not going to make good on that promise. So how am I supposed to trust him to make good on the promises he is making sportively for the club? going forward? How am I, like, for example, I really think that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is the right man to take Beşiktaş forward right now. But it doesn't matter who is the coach right now if you aren't going to get competent backing from the club leadership. Then it doesn't matter who your coach is. You can have Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola. They're gonna fail. You're setting them up for failure if you don't back them properly. And if this is how Serdar Adalı is going to come true on all his promises, 33%, yeah, then we're not gonna get anywhere.
No, and obviously my reference is not to the sportive side, because I agree with you there.
Course,
I think good steps are taken. But if you look at all the financial side and the promises, mainly on the financial issues, I think it's very poor. And this is sort of another promises that now falls through, unless he finds 64 million euros by this Sunday, and that he can announce that we're out of the bank again.
52, I think. $52 million. $52 million.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
53.
A shitload of money.
Well, let's see. The bank union debt is, I believe, $90 million, right?
Okay, I thought it's 4.3 billion liras.
Oh, 4.3 billion liras. Yeah, okay.
So I think it's a little bit more than 90, but anyway, it needs a serious amount of money.
Let's call it 60. Let's call it $60 million to be safe. So he needs to find that. So
before Sunday.
I think we've talked enough about this. Can you alluded to it a little bit? Do you have some information on the real estate projects? What's happening right there? Because we were hearing, I feel like there's a lot of misinformation or confusing information on that as well, like the initial plan that they had. And I'm sorry I didn't ask you about this beforehand, otherwise you could have prepared a little bit. But just from the top of your head, what do you know about the real estate projects going forward at the moment? What is the plan?
Yeah, sure. So if you remember, there are 3 projects. There were 2 projects that were talked about during election time. Yeah. One was Pasha Mandra, which is a smaller plot of land and was intended for training ground.
Yeah, on the Asian side.
Exactly, Asian side. Nothing happened there. So he's looking for. So there's an investor. No, there's a fan sponsor that wants to develop it at 0 cost. So he's going to pay for development of the training ground. But Adalı said, I want to look at other options. So he's refused that offer, so to say, and he's looking into other options. So nothing has happened there. Then this, as Sinan calls it, Never Land, somewhere between the airport and city center, 10-minute drive from both sides.
Yeah.
It has become clear that the owner of that piece of land, or partial owner, the alleged American, he doesn't want to sell. So they didn't come to an agreement. So they need to revisit their whole plan. He still wants to develop there, but they need to revisit, because I think the business case is not adding up without those additional square meters that they're now missing, because the owner doesn't want to sell, or the owners don't want to sell. So that's also sort of on hold for now. They're working on.
Like that's something you should have already had lined up, right?
Yeah, that was one of our comments when we discussed it, right? Like, okay, but it sounds all nice, but nothing's on paper. It doesn't sound solid.
That's like me saying,
and it happened.
There's a plot of land here in the city center, and I'd love to put some apartments there to make money, and that's my plan. But I've actually never spoken to the owner of the land before,
But surprise, he's doing it again, and right before the elections, there is now another plot of land, 15,000 square meters. It's basically some leftover plots of land of Fulya, because it's around the existing Fulya
development,
shopping mall, etc. So around the Fulya project, 15,000 square meters to be developed, and he has again signed a protocol. And you hear the sarcasm in my voice, but that's now sort of the new project that's also going to yield 200 million allegedly. But you tell me, right? Protocols left or right, but no money coming in.
I do think that he genuinely plans to develop real estate that is clear, because if you look at his list of board members, there's like tons of people with a construction background there. So he clearly is planning on doing something. The problem is that right now, that's all still in its infancy. There's like, we are nowhere near going to work yet, so to speak. The first bricks, we're nowhere near laying the first brick, so to speak. So realistically, the time that Beşiktaş will see any money off of this, like I said during the election campaign, like, that's probably years down the road. Like, Beşiktaş isn't going to see any money of this for years to come, and we need money now to get out of the bank union agreement. So all these real estate projects, that's great down the road, but if you're in the meantime stuck with this bank union loan and you're left paying $45 million every year in interest, then by the time you get to your $200 million project, you've paid off more than $200 million already in interest. So what's the point, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and that's the problem here.
Yeah.
And of course, he's focusing on real estate project because he's a real estate man, and everybody around him, there's money in it. So let's not kid ourselves. Yeah. They're also in this position to do business, which also helps them. I'm not saying they're only in it to help themselves, but it wouldn't be the first time, right? Or they're partners.
If they can help the club and like it benefits the club greatly, they can make money off of it. I don't care. They're putting their time and their effort into it. As long as it's divided fairly, I don't care. But
I don't trust it. Look at Fulya.
I don't trust it either.
I really don't trust it.
We saw it with Fulya. You can't, like, if they do it correctly, then it's a symbiotic relationship where everyone benefits. But as we saw with Fulya, that's not the case. They just gobbled all the profit up there and left Beşiktaş with scraps. That can be the intention. Now, obviously, that is not Adale, but he was there, I think, at the time. But
yeah, you don't know, of course, what his role was, we have to see. But
probably not very big because he became a board member later on, I think. But at that time, I think all those protocols were signed already. But anyway, Ural, thank you very much for your time and for your very good explanation on what the situation is exactly. I hope that you all learned something as I did. And if you like this sort of content, I know this is less flashy. This isn't really about the game we all know and love, football, but this is very inside baseball, so to speak. So it's very technical, all these financial numbers, all this kind of stuff. It's not for everyone, we know that. But I hope that if you do like this kind of stuff, that you show us some love and appreciation by hitting that like button and that subscribe button and hitting that bell notification. And once again, thank you, Ural, for joining us. Hopefully we can talk again soon. And hopefully at that point we can be a little bit more positive about how the foreseeable financial future for Beşiktaş is looking.
I'll do my best. My pleasure as always. Happy to help.
Yeah, and thank you all for watching. See you again next time. Bye-bye.